Hello everyone, this is Faith at Faith and Books. How are you doing? It is early Saturday morning. Well, not that early. It's 8:20 and I am on my way to get my car inspected. But I thought I would stop here. I haven't been in this park for a while, I think since last winter. And I would do a quick video and then on a little book haul that I did last weekend, and then a review of a book that I just finished reading. Is the light gonna be bad here? I didn't think about the lighting. Let me see if I can just turn this way and talk. Okay, so anyway, the book I brought with me, because I know I'm gonna have to be waiting in line for my car inspection, is Cymbeline by Shakespeare. So this is my participation in Shakestember, though this isn't one of the plays that they're reading. I'm not doing any of the prompts. But I do like to read at least one Shakespeare play in September. And I love to watch all the videos. I haven't watched very many, but I plan to. So I'm going to make Sunday afternoon my video watching time. So I'm saving it for that. But I did start Cymbeline earlier this week. I read a couple of pages. Oh, more than that, 6 pages. But I can't remember it, and it was confusing. It's one of those plays where it opens up where this one guy is explaining, like, its exposition of the whole complicated plot and the it's very confusing family stuff going on. So I think I need to reread it so that I understand it. But I plan to really focus on this weekend, try to knock this baby out. You know, maybe I won't finish it Sunday, but maybe Monday. So anyway, that's what I'm bringing to the car place. But last weekend, I had a really fun experience. My daughter, who just moved out of the house where she graduated from college, and then she moved up to Pennsylvania, but she's getting married next May, and she wanted to buy a wedding dress from this place over in Maryland called, let's see if I can remember, it's Sherry, like the French word Sherry, a Sustainable Bridal. And it's located in this really neat mall that's made out of an old mill. And what's really neat about the mall is everything in the mall is either secondhand or thrift or antique or local artisans or artists. And then they also had like an outdoor adventure place, because located right next to it is, I guess it must have been the stream that the mill used many days ago or many years ago. In days gone by. And now it's like an adventure course, zip line kind of thing, which seemed pretty popular. There were a lot of people there for that. But anyway, it was a really neat mall. This mill transformed into this mall. And I got there. A bunch of us were meeting there to help her pick out her wedding dress. And I got there earliest, so I went into this used bookstore and I bought a few books. So I thought I would show you. So the first book that I saw was this book by John Hassler, The Dean's List. I don't believe I ever read this, but back in the 90s, I was really into John Hassler. And in fact, I think that I have read almost all these books. Staggerford, I actually own a paperback of that. Simon's Night, I don't really remember, but I do think I read it. The Love Hunter was one of my favorite. A Green Journey. And then the follow-up to that, like, it's the same character as Dear James. And then Grand Opening, I remember that one. I remember North of Hope. I don't think I remember Rookery Blues, which is what they're citing here on the cover. Anyway, I really like John Hassler, and it was fun to see him. I hadn't thought about him for a while. So yeah, so I got this. And then I also got this, The Cruise of the Snark by Jack London. Now, when I was a kid, I read Call of the Wild and White Fang over and over again. I love those books. And lately, I've been wanting to read more Jack London. In fact, I think I downloaded one from Book Gorilla on my Kindle. There's this lady just walking. I think she's just walking around the parking lot or something. Anyway, so I've been thinking about reading more Jack London. So when I saw this, The Cruise of the Snark, by Jack London. I thought, oh, maybe I'll pick this up because it's a memoir of a sailing adventure he went on with his wife. And so, and I've been reading a lot of sailing books, with reading all the Hornblower books, and then reading the Swallows and Amazon series. Last year I read 2 Years Before the Mast, which was a nonfiction memoir. And then, so I thought this would fit right in with my reading right now. I don't know why I'm on this sailing jag, but I am. So anyway, so that appealed to me. And then I saw this, Victorian Ghost Stories. And two things about this. One, I was watching Miranda Mills. I don't know if it was a recent video she did or one from a while ago. But, she always does seasonal recommendations. And so she was recommending Victorian Ghost Stories for the fall, because of Halloween, of course. I don't even think she mentioned Victober. But also in Victober, which I decided I'm going to try and do all the prompts for Victober. One of the prompts, I think it's Petra Yu. Hers was read a book in first person, because most of the novels in Victorian times were written third person. There are a few that first person, like David Copperfield springs to mind, but a couple of these in here are, I noticed, first person. So I might squeeze in that prompt, because I'm a slow reader, and I'm planning to read. I'll go into my Victober plans later, but I really put a lot on my plate, self-inflicted. But I do want to try. Challenge myself to see if I can read a lot of Victorian literature and do all the prompts. I don't think I've ever completed all the prompts before. Anyway, a couple of these are in first person. The only one that I have read before is The Old Nurse's Story by Elizabeth Gaskell. But some of the authors, Baring Gould, I read one book by, I can't remember the name of it, but I've read a novel by him. E.F. Benson, Algernon Blackwood, Charles Dickens, Amelia Edwards, and then Elizabeth Gaskell, The Old Nurse's Story, M.R. James, The Man of Science by Jerome K. Jerome, Percival Landon, and then Joseph Sheridan. I've heard of him. Vernon Lee, haven't heard of him, and Edith Nesbit. Now, I always thought she was more Edwardian, but maybe she's at the very tail end of Victorian, the Victorian period. Anyway, so I think I'm going to enjoy that, and I want to reread The Nurse's Story, and then I'll get my first-person narrative in for the Victober prompt. And then, so we tried on the wedding dresses. My daughter did. We had she had one of her sisters with her, and then her maid of honor and her one of her bridesmaids, and then me. You're allowed to have 4 people help you try on your dresses. So we just went in. You had to have an appointment. You ring the doorbell, you go in, and you pick out the dresses. So she had a general idea of what she wanted. So we all went through and picked out a dress, and then she started trying them on, and we finally decided on the one. It's lovely. I approve, and I think she looked beautiful in it. So it was a really fun outing. But then after that, we went to an antique store. It was 2 floors. It was just amazing. It's a little bit pricey, but it was really fun to wander through. And they also had books, and I found this book. So this is The Golden Age by Kenneth Grahame, who wrote The Wind in the Willows. This is a 1952 edition. And it's illustrated by Ernest Shepard, who did the Winnie the Pooh illustrations. So I thought it was just charming looking. And I would like to read it, because I love Wind in the Willows. I love Winnie the Pooh. It was like a perfect combination. So I got that as well. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is I finished The Secret of the Old Clock, the first Nancy Drew mystery in the series. This is the 1959 re-edition. They were originally written in the 30s. I think the first one was 1930. And they were longer, and they changed some things about Nancy Drew. Like, I was doing some sleuthing. I was reading up on all this on Wikipedia and other places. She was originally 16, and her temperament was different. She was a lot feistier and more anti-authoritarian or anti-authority kind of personality, and apparently it was more description. It was maybe a slower moving story. But they reissued them in 1959, and that's when they had these covers. And if my sister Terry is watching, do you remember the books that we had up in the attic? They were on that, they were by the staircase, and there was that big flat place where we had all these books stacked. Because I remember Nancy Drew books being there, and we had some of these, I think. But we also had the blue. They're almost like a denim blue cover with no picture, or like just a little outline or silhouette. And I remember the book, The Hidden Staircase, which is the second in the series. This has both here. So they're much shorter because they've combined them into they've combined two stories into one volume. And the print's pretty big. I mean, these are not long. They're like less than 200 pages. And I think the originals were longer. But I remember The Hidden Staircase. I think I remember The Hidden Staircase was thicker. Do you remember that, Terry? Do you remember where we got those books? Did we just always get them at the, the St. James Bazaar, where there were all those used books for sale? Every year they would do that. And I remember buying books there. I'm just wondering where they came from. And if we had the 1930s versions and the 1959 versions, like both of them. Yeah. Anyway, that's memory lane. But when I read Nancy Drew when I was a child, I only read the first couple, I think, because it was really my older sister, not Terry, but Paula, really loved them and read them a lot, and lots of them. If we didn't own them, she would go to the library and get them. And I remember she's 4.5 years older than me. I used to always tag along after her. In fact, she'd always say, "Don't be such a tag along," because it was annoying to have me always tagging along, wanting to do everything she did. And so I remember reading the first couple of ones, but then I remember thinking, I have this memory of deciding that was her thing, and that I would be a tag along if I made Nancy Drew my thing as well. And so I didn't. So it was like a very dim feeling of me as a child trying to, create a boundary or differentiate myself from my older sister, kind of to not be a pest or a copycat kind of thing. So yeah, so Nancy Drew kind of had a really deep impact on me in a way. Anyway, The Secret of the Old Clock. I enjoyed reading it. It was just very fun and nostalgic. I'm in a Voxer group that Mitzi Reads and Writes has started, and people are just talking about all kinds of things there. It's a fun group. The writing is not stellar. It's wooden, and yet I feel like somebody really used a thesaurus, because it seems like the vocabulary is pretty good, but it's just wooden writing, and it's very simplistic. Everything's just a little too convenient. And you don't read these as great literature, but coming off of just reading We Didn't Mean to Go to Sea by Arthur Ransom, you can write middle grade books that are really beautifully written. But these were just produced to, just to gobble them up one after the other for the mystery's sake and for the Nancy Drew persona. So yeah, the writing's not great, but on the other hand, it's very enjoyable. And Nancy is always gracious, even though she's spunky. She's always polite. People are always inviting her to lunch, or she's inviting people to lunch. I really liked River Heights and the setting of it. There was something about that really did evoke sort of middle, small town, middle America, that was really enjoyable and nostalgic. So I enjoyed it, and at some point I'll get to the hidden staircase. I don't really have it on my agenda right now because I want to get through Cymbeline. So, all right, talked for almost 15 minutes, so that's long enough. So I'm off to get my car inspected and many other things today. So I will see you later, and I hope you're doing well, and happy reading.